Here we have the N-scale caboose that we've been selling for the last couple of years. We've sold hundreds of these and they've worked very well. They have a board called the SuperCap board, has 8 capacitors, and they're sandwiched between, there are actually 2 boards, and we have the user solder these 2 boards together. Most folks get that right. Been occasionally some challenges with that. I don't think I'm on the track here. But anyway, so you can kind of see what we've got going here. I'm using my DCC system to turn the lights on and off, and they have a pretty good capacitance. I'm going to take the the Caboose board off the track, and the lights stay on for a couple of seconds. They fade, but they stay on. So this has worked really well. Of course, none of the Cabooses come pre-connected with the wheel wipes. So these are our floating brass pickups, and they're pretty easy to install. It wraps around the axle, and the nice thing about this is they float. They sit on the axle. They don't pinch it or put pressure on it. So that, generally speaking, allows the car to roll, which is great. There's much less friction. And you can see the blue light's a power light, and then we have 3 lights on there. This is the demo one we had been using. It has a lantern in the back, which is very small, and there's a fiber optic wire and a little dongle. And here are the 2 wires for the red light. And then this one, we put some tin foil, sort of double stick tin foil on the roof so it reflects these lights, and the windows have been frosted, and then the cupola has its own light. There's a little chip in there, so quite a task putting all of that together, but it worked great. So here's the new board, and this is quite interesting. This is the main processor unit, and this is the accelerometer, this little square thing. We now have 4 lights on here, and we fastened the supercaps on the bottom of the board. So in fact, this whole contraption is about half the thickness of the previous board. The other thing, and we'll talk about that in a minute, is in the past we suggested double stick tape. Since the bottom of the board did not have components on it, putting the double stick tape on the bottom of the board was fine. However, when you have the super caps and they're just soldered on, if you use double stick tape and you try to pull it off, it's very likely that the thin copper that holds the super caps onto the board will rip off the board. So we're going to show you an alternate way to attach these boards to here, and really all we need to do is just keep it seated. It's not going to get much violent shaking or anything. But anyway, so that's what we're going to do. So what we're going to do is take this board off and replace it with this one. And so I'm going to put this over on the side a little bit. I'm going to move the test track out of the way so that I can put this little piece of board here. This is the TrainSense board, and I'm going to give it power. And since it was moving around, the lights came on automatically. And it's about 10-second delay, and we're at about 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So now if I move the board, you can see that the lights come on. Now I'm going to let it sit, and the lights will fade off. So there's another video, the intro video, product announcement video, talks a lot about how you can change how long the lights stay on, what brightness, whether they go off completely or whether they stay on a little bit. When the car moves and the Caboose moves, the lights come on fully and then fade. And all of those different options are available because there's a set of timers, 2 timers, and a bunch of settings on this circuit. Now this is quite a challenge, and we actually progressed in our engineering here at Model Train Technology. This board is a 2-layer board, which means there's a top and a bottom, and that's pretty simple. Assembling parts, well actually that's the new board, but the old board was a 2-layer board, top and bottom, and that's pretty easy. We did develop the technique to solder on both sides. This board would not fit all of the traces and the wiring, So it's a 4-layer board, and going from 2-layer to 4-layer board, there are two middle layers sandwiched in between. So it just takes a bit more time and engineering to get that right. And also the boards are a little bit more expensive to manufacture. But anyway, that's the motion sensing train sense board that we're going to put into the Caboose. First thing that we have to do is unsolder the two DCC connections. And I'm using neat pliers like this because I'm looking at the camera. I have magnifying glass on, and this is about 6 inches away from me. But anyway, we got it done. And so what we're going to do is just use the tweezers, and I'll show you this wrapping technique. You saw how they're crossed over. That's just helpful for wire management, so we'll repeat that with the new board. Okay, so those are off. And now the tricky part is that we're going to take one of these box knives, and we're going to have to pull this away from the camera in a minute. But what I'm going to do is very carefully go and sort of slice the bottom between the double stick foam tape and the metal weight. And I'm going to do that all the way around. And it's pretty stuck on there, so it's going to take me a minute or two. But that's the technique. You got to go both sides and just kind of slice it down and just slice through it. Take your time. And if you try to rip it off, it'll just, all sorts of bad things can happen. There can break the plastic parts and so forth. So, all right, so we'll come back once we get that separated. All right, off camera, I worked at it a little bit and sort of cut through repeatedly on both sides. And now, using the provided screwdrivers that we provide for, not for the Caboose boards, for all the other signal controllers, you can see that I can very carefully sort of pull this off and remove that from the Caboose. All right, so that's the old board. All right, so we're going to clean this up, and then we'll work on putting in the train sense board. And what I'm using is just using my fingernail here, and the foam tape does dry out, so this, I can tell this is a couple of years old. And what I'm going to do is just keep working at it, just like this. Gentle pressure. Again, I don't want to break anything or push anything apart. And I'll keep cleaning that, and we're almost done. Okay, the next step is to use double-sided tape, but this is not foam tape. This is just regular Scotch double-sided tape, and I ripped off a longer piece than I need because I had to cut it with the scissors. It's too wide and too long, and so what I wanted to do is fit kind of in the middle of this spot right here, and just tap it down. And then likewise with the second piece that I have here, I'm going to trim it on lengthwise and widthwise, and just place it right in the middle, just like that. Okay, now one of the things to notice in the layout of the super caps, they're mostly evenly spaced, but there's a little bit of a bigger gap in the middle, and I'm going to take advantage of that because the wires are in the middle here. But if you need to run the wire because the hole comes up down at this end or down at this end, try to position it so you can slide the wire right through the slot, and then the board will fit. The board will sit flush on the car. Now we want to make sure we get it largely centered, and just what I found is just wiggling it a little bit, and there we go, it's done. All right, so oops, I knocked it off with my hand, but there we go. So that should hold it in place. And the next thing that we're going to do is just solder these wires. So the way I'm going to do that, as I mentioned before, is I'm going to take this side, maybe I should put it on the little piece of Well, maybe I can put it on the track. Track is unplugged, track is unplugged. Okay, and that way it won't slide back and forth. I'm going to put this one here. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is feed this wire through here and loop it. And that kind of keeps everything in the middle and gives it a little bit of pressure. And just a tap with the soldering iron, and that should do it. Okay, we've plugged in the test track, and we're going to put the caboose on the track. Just to make sure I've got it on the wheels aligned right. There we go. Okay. So now we have it set so it auto starts into motion sensing mode, and in 10 seconds from when I last touch it, the lights will go off as it just did. And let's just move the car again, and the lights will come on and do the same routine. So now I'm going to take my Digitrax controller and I'm going to press F10. F10 is on right now, so when I press, well, let me do this. When I press F10, Train Sense shuts off, and now I can just turn the lights on with DCC, just as I could before. So that feature and capability remains intact. We've added the Train Sense mode, so I'm going to turn Train Sense on. Of course, the car is just sitting there, so nothing's going to happen until we give it a little tug, and then move it along the track, and there we go. The lights will come on. All right. Now there are 5 preset modes for all of the Train Sense boards, and so one of the ways to do that is it's 1 through 5. So if I press this once, you notice what we've been doing so far is the lights have been fading on and off, and so now that quick 3 flashes tells us that it's now in a different mode. And so now the lights will go on instantaneously. It turns off the fade. There's the first 2 are pretty identical. One has fade and one doesn't. So pushing once puts us in scenario or behavior 1, and the lights go on and off instantaneously. They go on, and when the timer times out, that 10-second timer, then the lights will just shut off, and you can change that. Now, the second behavior is 2 flashes, or 2 pushes, sorry. 1, 2. And now it's ready. And so now, once you get it going, the fade mode will kick in. So you'll see it fade off once the timer expires. There it goes. And then when it goes back on again, it fades on. There we go. Okay. I keep knocking the wire on the DCC terminal here, but there you go. You've got a good sense of that, right? Okay. The last thing we're going to do is put the carcass back together and see how the whole thing looks. Okay, I just slid the car back together again, and we are going to put it on the track, and there we go. You can see the lights inside, and the lights move, and then the lights will just shut off after the same 10-second timing. Okay, so we had it back on fade. Now, this car, as you saw, let's see if I can do it. Get down here and get a little bit lower. There we go. Okay, so the lantern is not on, and I'm on the main track right now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off Train Sense. And now I'm going to turn the lights on manually. Okay, now F3 turns the red rear light on. You can see that. I'm turning it on and off. And F6 will make it blink. Did I make it blink? There we go. Okay, but that's not happening during train sense mode. So what we're going to do is we're going to change to the programming track. I'm just doing that by plugging this little wire in here. And on the chart that you can see, we'll show that right up on the screen here in a second, you can see that turning the red rear on is CV65. So we're going to go to CV65 and change it to 1, and the lights will blink, and the rear mode we want is 66, and we want that to be 1, and that's all there is to it. And we're going to change back to the main line. And now, remember, when we boot up, the train is in train sense mode. There come the lights, and the rear light is now, turn that, is now blinking, and will stay blinking as long as train sense is on, or you have it configured that way. If you want a solid red, you can do that as well. And we just move the car and get a close-up again. You can see that. You can see the cupola light. And as soon as it fades off, I'll give it a little nudge, and you can see that train sense mode again. All right, so there we go. So we reinstalled this, removed the old board, and installed the new train sense board. Great. Okay, thank you for watching.